This video is for African people worldwide, in Africa and outside of Africa. I'm in Yanga, Veracruz in Mexico, standing before a statue that was built for an African man by the name of Gasper Yanga. Yanga, as he is known, led one of the most successful slave rebellions against the Spanish in the early colonial period here in Mexico. It's not exactly known when he escaped from slavery, but around 1570, he was very instrumental in helping develop free African communities in this area. These communities lived free in Veracruz, North Veracruz, Central Veracruz, and the mountainous areas for a period of about 30 to 39 years. Around 1607, 1608, many of the wealthy slave owners in cities like Puebla and Mexico City began to complain because many of the slaves were escaping to these communities. Obviously, that wasn't in the best interest of the slave owners. So they were petitioning and protesting the government to do something about these communities. The government put together a force of about 550 people to find these communities and destroy them. When Yanga got word of this, he sent a captured Spaniard that he had prisoners of Spaniards, because they would often do raids on Spanish caravans for supplies and foods, and he would take prisoners also. Well, he sent the captured Spaniard to speak with this troop of 550 people and negotiate a peace treaty. The terms in his peace treaty was this: number one was land for his people, number two was self-government. Anything less than self-government was unacceptable. They refused to be ruled by outside forces. The Spanish ignored this and continued to search for them to destroy. Well, when the Spanish finally got to the community, they went to war. There was no asking for land or begging for land, anything like that. They went to war about it. Both sides suffered heavy casualties. Eventually, the people that was in Yanga's area fled the area and went into the mountains, higher up into the mountains, where the Spanish couldn't penetrate because of lack of knowledge of the terrain. What happened was the Spanish burned the community down. The people that fled, Yanga himself included, they built another community. They rose up again. And eventually the Spanish, realizing the degree of resistance that these people had, eventually they both came back to the negotiating table again, and it was allowed that Yanga and his people would have free land and self-government. One condition that Yanga had to compromise on was, after the peace treaty was signed, any new slaves that had to return, that tried to escape to their community, had to be returned to the slave owners. No one knows if that was actually enforced, but that's one of the compromises that he had to make. Later on, he died, and it was in the peace treaty that when he died, his son would take over. Later on, it was found out that his son was allowing slaves to come to the community, and the Spanish continued to try to destroy them. And ultimately, they were successful. But what happened was, many of the African people fled the area and they moved into central Mexico, because Veracruz is right on the coast. When the Spanish came, they brought slaves with them right to the coast. Sugar was the main crop in Veracruz, so they had many sugar plantations. Once the people started fleeing, they started going into places like Oaxaca, Guerrero, y Acapulco también. Acapulco also, sorry. I'm standing before this statue right now. This was one of the earliest free lands for African people. This was 200 years before the Mexican Revolution. This was 100 and some odd years before the Haitian Revolution. When you come into this town, Yanga, there's a sign. You know how there's a sign that says, "Welcome to this area, welcome to this area"? It says this is the first free land in all of the Americas. When the indigenous and the Mexicans were under occupation by the Spanish, Africans were living here free. Let me show you the statue. This is Gaspar Yanga. Like I said, his communities was built up of escaped slaves, men and women. And since I've been here in Mexico, I got here in January, but since I've been here, I just couldn't wait to get here. So my school ended last week and I came right over here to see this and pay my respects. Yanga, Veracruz, if you ever want to come, Yanga, Veracruz is very easy to find. It's near Cordoba. It's about 20 minutes away from Cordoba. Now I want to tell you this. Don't expect to see anything like this on the mainstream media. This will not be portrayed. This goes directly against the agenda of how they want to portray us in the media. Okay? Anytime African people showed an immense amount of bravery and things like that, it's to be ignored and locked away in the vault somewhere. Before I came, I asked plenty of people, do you know Yanga? Do you know where Yanga is? Who is Gaspar Yanga? And many of the Mexicans don't even know because the history is pretty much ignored. It's 3 races in Mexico: the Spanish, the indigenous, and the Africans, from a smaller minority, the Africans. But their history is pretty much ignored. Every year in August, there's a carnival called the Carnival of Negritude, where Mexicans celebrate this man. Businesses, stores, parks, everything around here bear the name Yanga on it. Okay? So this is history that needs to be exposed to our people, not only in the West, but in Africa also. These were real freedom fighters. Okay? All of his communities were strategically built in areas where the terrain was difficult for outsiders to get to. It is said that he was a prince that was captured in the area of Gabon or Angola. So this is deep history, and I'm glad I had the chance to come. If you ever get the chance to come and see it. You know, like I was saying, anytime you had African men and women, and I want to emphasize women because women have always had a major role in all of our liberation movements. Anytime that we've stood up for the liberation of African people like this, of this nature, it's never portrayed in the media. You know, you won't see a movie about Nat Turner. You won't see a movie about Toussaint Louverture or Jacques Dessalines. You won't see a movie about Nanny of the Maroons, and you definitely won't see a movie about Gaspar Yanga. Okay? Usually they'll show you when it's Africans demonstrating immense bravery. It's when it's movies and in the mainstream media, it's when we killing each other or Africans fighting other people's battles, such as Red Tails or Buffalo Soldiers or something like that. But when it's Africans that's fighting our enemies and fighting to liberate ourselves, then that's not going to be showed to you, and there are specific reasons why. So, just really wanted to get this out there and promote it to the people. I'm going to post a few links on here also, just in case you want to dig a little deeper and get some more information for yourself. Okay? So, this is Samori at the TheSamoriXperience. Let me show them to you again. And there's many cities near here that have African names: Mandinga, Mandoba. That's a knife in his hand there with a long stick, bamboo. It's bamboo stick. Then you got the chain on his wrist right there, if you can see it. So this is definitely deep history that we need to know. If you ever get a chance, you come to Mexico, Veracruz, come to Yanga and see this statue, see this history. I'm gonna try to get over to the museum and see what kind of history they got over there on him. Thanks for watching. This is Samori at the TheSamoriXperience.